Welcome back to some Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I should be seeing what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where we'll be talking about, as you can tell from probably the title of this episode, is the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, which came out recently. This is not me recreating it if you're new to the series. This is me just doing a video diary on Animal Crossing New Horizons, where I talk about basically whatever I want to for that day. So don't expect anything actually Five Nights at Freddy's related in here. This is literally just all my opinions and random thoughts. I always preamble with that now because I can't remember. There was something I did ages ago where I just like did a review and I didn't do like a preamble sort of thing, and then people were just like, "Where is it?" And I was like, "Oh god." Anyway, hello everyone. Right now on Fawnhallow, it's 3:57 p.m. on Sunday, November 12th, 2023. I don't even know if it's necessary anymore. I think most people now who are tuning in are viewers who are just like, "Oh, you know, I want to have my daily dose of relaxing tea of Animal Crossing with dear darling," which I'm all for, to be honest. I love tea. But yeah, we're going to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's movie today because it's something I saw yesterday. And I'll warn you before I get into any spoilers, which I'm going to be honest, there's not really much in a way to spoil, especially if you've played the game / know the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's. There's like, I mean, I guess there's stuff is a spoil, but I don't think your experience of a movie would be ruined by it being spoiled for you. It's not really that sort of movie. But what are my overall thoughts of it? I would say overall, I think it's not really a great movie. Not like from a critical standpoint, I don't think it's a good movie, but I think it's a nice fan servicey movie. And not in fan service in like, which is often used in like anime sense. Fan service as in literally just sort of like there to not placate fans, but there to be like, hey, look, it's that reference to that thing or something. So it's basically, if you like the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise and you know stuff about it, you follow the law, etc., you've played the games and that sort of thing, I think and you're a general fan of a series, I think in general you'll probably like it. I think if you're a horror enthusiast, it depends on what kind of horror you like. Like if you like what's the word, theatrical, campy sort of slasher-esque horror, you might find it amusing, you know, like the sort of comedic type of horror, which is just sort of like light-hearted, or all the tropes, that sort of thing. If you like more like thriller-esque horror, I don't think you'll care that much for it. I think you'll be sorely disappointed. And if you don't know anything about Five Nights at Freddy's, I'm not really a horror fan, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think you should watch it. I don't think you'll get much out of it, to be honest. So I don't even know where to start, I suppose. I guess from here on out, all spoilers are off. I'll probably try and start with milder spoilers if you're willing to tempt fate, in case I go into a deeper spoiler or anything like that. But yeah, from this point onwards, spoilers are all bets are off. I will potentially spoil anything and everything about this movie, but essentially, I don't even know where to start. What I would describe as being a core issue, I suppose, of Five Nights at Freddy's is it doesn't really capture, I think, what made the games initially so special. And I don't know if that's necessarily because of the lyrics of execution. I'm sure part of it is due to the execution just going in a different direction to the actual game, but I'm also sure that a lot of it's due to the novelty of it in general, not really being there anymore. It's not quite the same. But to me, Five Nights at Freddy's, I have played the original Five Nights at Freddy's. I played most of I played 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. I don't remember. I think I own 4, but maybe I've not played it. I can't honestly remember. But they're not a series I played all that much. It's something which, I'm going to be honest, is as someone who has very mild reactions to everything, it loses its charm, I think, after a while. Five Nights at Freddy's. I think the best part of Five Nights at Freddy's is it's a fun game to sort of react to. If you like to be scared, like to have shocked, if you're a very expressive person, you know, like, which is why it's so popular, I think, for people to watch YouTubers doing that sort of thing. Like, I'm 100% me playing it compared to like watching Markiplier or something play it is, Markiplier is a lot more entertaining. He's much more expressive than I am. I'm just sort of just like, oh. Or he's going like, oh my god, don't get me, or something like that. As theatrical as dramatic as I'm sure he plays it up a little bit, you know, then I'm sure part of it is somewhat genuine at the same time. But the thing about Five Nights at Freddy's to me is, one, I think a lot of it is in the novelty, I think, when it first came out. I don't think there has been like a Chuck E. Cheese-esque inspired horror sort of game where it's like, oh, you know, I mean, there have been things which have been spins on like childhood classics, I suppose, but I don't think there's one for like animatronics or whatever. But the actual core gameplay loop of Five Nights at Freddy's, I think, is very novel for a horror game at a time, because I think a lot of the mainstream horror games are things like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Amnesia, especially at that time, things which are about exploring and wandering, not Phantasmophobia, what's Outlast, things which are about going to places, exploring and navigating and being like chased, I suppose, by an unseen threat, a horror threat, and that therein lies the struggle and the tension behind it. But Five Nights at Freddy's, I often said this, I think it's very awesome how it sort of subverts that. Instead of it being sort of one where you're going exploring and stuff, it's one about survival in the sense that you're sort of trying to stave off a threat as long as possible. It's sort of like there's an inevitable clock ticking down to you being, you know, your end, game over in this game, or to being spooked, and you are basically just doing anything you can to delay that time as much as possible. It adds another sort of tension, where the tension isn't, oh, what's behind the door, it's how long can I keep this going, like I'm almost out of resources, but I've still got like 1 hour left, when is the clock going to tick over. It's an interesting, I think, change of pace, I think, to the genre in general, which is what made it so novel. So really, if I'd had to describe its Five Nights at Freddy's, it's very much that sort of creeping tension, or escalating tension of the inevitable happening and you just staving it off as long as possible until you're safe. The thing with a Five Nights at Freddy's movie is there's not really that much tension in it. But the main thing about Five Nights at Freddy's movie is a really weird mix of like what it's trying to do. I assume what it's trying to do is because Five Nights at Freddy's is, by its nature, as a horror franchise, horrible things have happened in the game, as most horror games kind of have as lore. If you don't know the actual lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, basically this person was a murderer and murdered like 5 children whose souls now inhabit these animatronics, and now they are sort of, I don't know why necessarily they were so bent on getting revenge on the security guards, but it's something like weird corruption. And I don't know, the Five Nights at Freddy's lore goes like really ridiculously, like it's overinflated, I would say, to an insane degree. But that's sort of like the general concepts, I think. Now, again, I'm not an expert in Five Nights at Freddy's, so I might be completely wrong. I might just completely misjudge it. Maybe it's not as overinflated as I think, and it all makes perfect sense. But I have that's sort of a general idea. Bad guy came along, murdered some children, and the children's ghosts now inhabit these animatronics. I forgot where I was going with this, but the Five Nights at Freddy, yeah, because it's inherently a horror thing, but it's also got like a really strong appeal in like preteen to teenage to young adult audience. Like I think most people, as I'm aware of, who are fans of like Five Nights at Freddy's, tend to be, I'm going to guess somewhere in the range of 13 to 18 maybe. I think when I first started hearing about it, I might have been around like 18ish or something, around that sort of range. I'm not even sure. When did Five Nights at Freddy's come out? FNAF release date. GIM. 2014. I was 17. Okay, well, yeah, that sounds about right. I was like, it was about A-level time, I think, for me, when I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. Is that right? How is that right? FNAF World came out in, 26. Okay, yes. But I didn't really follow it that much. I followed it a bit in first year uni, but those games came out at an alarming rate, I'm going to be honest. So it's also needs to have some sort of, not family appeal, but much more of a general sort of appeal. But it's also got this sort of like deep, whimsical lore behind it at the same time, which it all tries to marry together in this movie, but I don't think it really sort of nails it. Like, it's not that great as like a thriller horror movie. Like there's one section, I suppose, with tension where the animatronics basically just go on a sort of like a murderous rampage, but at the same time the movie wants to make them sort of like sympathetic, rather than just being like horrific monsters as they seem to appear in the first game. They want to make them like sympathetic lore behind them, like a sort of drama, heart-breaking story about the children, which is fair enough. That is like part of the lore, but it's something which I feel like you kind of get rid of a mystery, I suppose, if you do it straight from the beginning. A lot of part of Five Nights at Freddy's was the discovery of it in the first place, and I suppose in a meta sense, it's quite difficult to untangle what people know about Five Nights at Freddy's from it. It's like you can't keep that a secret, really, because people already discovered it in game, people already are going to know about it in the movie. But still, I mean, I guess you can kind of try a little bit. Instead, it's sort of tied into the beginning, straight off the bat. It's like with the core concept is being able to understand like these souls of the children stuck inside or something. but they're also quite goofy, I suppose, at the same time, is how I describe them. They're sort of got like a weird, silly, campy charm to them. Campy in the sort of like theatrical sense. I don't know what the actual proper term for is. But yeah, like, isn't it called like camp horror, right? I always assumed it meant like not campy as in like a much more derogatory term, but as in like of relating to like a summer camp. But I don't actually know if that's true. I should probably look it up before I just start saying stuff randomly. But it's like weirdly comedic is how I describe how they display a lot of time, and it's trying to merge these three things. Like, it's trying to get this like thriller slasher horror elements in there. It's trying to get like this heart-wrenching drama, I suppose, and mystery into it, and it's also trying to get this like whimsical silly goofy movie and all that at the same time, and it doesn't really quite pull any of them off to a certain degree that I'm like, this is engaging. I think amusingly the one I think it does best is the sort of silly goofy thing, which is not really what I think it's what modern Five Nights at Freddy's is known for, but I don't think it's what originally Five Nights at Freddy's is known for. But I mean, I guess that's kind of a direction the series is taking, especially with Security Breach having a much more sort of like the character designs themselves are very sort of like glammed up. I mean, quite literally, they're glam rock, aren't they? I'm not going to say it's necessarily a bad thing, because I think that sort of depends on your tastes. But I very much do think that it didn't quite succeed on being able to pull off any of these genres particularly effectively, and it just goes sort of back and forth like crazy. I think if you don't know the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, you must be losing your mind, because you'll be like, what on earth is going on? I've got no clue. Who is this person? Why is she here? Why does what she say make no sense? The dialogue was not great. There's a lot of times where I'm like, was dialogue cut and it makes no sense? Like, there's this absolutely mind-boggling bit to me personally with Vanessa, who I don't really know why she's here. I guess she, when you're first introduced to her, and I guess that's kind of part of the mystery, and it's like, oh, it's because my father is a killer, and you're like, whoa, I guess. But we don't really know who your father is, and I mean, you made it very, very obviously clear from early on you had some sort of ties with this place, with how sort of weirdly mysterious, like, non-answers you always give. And then she's just sort of like, I tried to tell you, I warn you about this place in my own way, and I was just like, what are you talking about? Excuse me? Your warnings were terrible if that's the case, Vanessa. And I also don't really get it, because like, Vanessa's an actual character in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, isn't she? She's not, I don't think she is the daughter of William Afton, who I think is like an ongoing serial killer throughout the series, right? She's like someone who I think became corrupted and then was like a successor to William Afton or something, and I don't really know off the top of my head, but it was insane. And then she also threatens to shoot him if he ever brings his sister back there, which is like, I like, okay, you couldn't just be like, don't do it, these robots are like killer machines inhabited by the souls of dead children or something. It's like, what? I don't really get what's going on. And then I don't know, the animatronics themselves, there was not really that much focus on them. Most of the focus was on the main character, I forgot his name now, Mike's story about, like, it was a weird thing where I'm like, Five Nights at Freddy's has enough lore already. I don't think you needed to put in lore for Mike. Like, they give him like a really sad backstory where his like younger brother got kidnapped essentially, and he never saw him again, and he spends his entire life trying to find out who the kidnapper was, and it just happens to be this guy, the evil person behind the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, which is a bit convoluted, but I'm willing to look past a bit of convolution, I suppose, for the sake of a story happening. But it's like, I mean, I feel like you don't need it for Five Nights at Freddy's. The whole point of Five Nights at Freddy's is the focus on the animatronics, right? But we don't really see all that much of the animatronics. They don't get like moments to be really scary and threatening. Like, I think the thing is, they look goofy and like slightly eerie, I suppose, as like child entertainers, like animatronics, like having a fun time in the pizzeria, but cast under a different light, they are like quite terrifying, like quite really spooky, and I feel like that balance is like the engaging part to me. But they just kind of seem like quite, I don't know, like quite goofy, yeah, dopey, I suppose, in the actual, I'm not sure dopey is the right word, but like sort of like mopey's not the right word, like they're just like they're just like I don't know, not mindless animals. Like they're like pets, I suppose. That all of them way they act. It's so weirdly goofy, and it almost crosses the line. I think this is why I said the childlike sort of whimsicalness with a horror paint on top is sort of the closest, I think, to the best execution of whatever genre it's trying to go for. Because spoilers, they all build a fort together for some reason. They all play and have a fun time. I actually just found it like ridiculously goofy at that point, where I'm like, okay, I feel like you're crossing very much into this sort of theatrical side of it, where it's become like amusing again. But it's so random. The plot is like crazy, full of holes. Like, like I don't even know. Like, I think the big one is certainly like how the fact that his aunt dies and is murdered in his home, and then it's just like it's never spoken about. It's never even approached about how like this could even possibly be resolved or anything like that. It's just, I don't know. I feel like for me personally, like, as I say, there's a lot of nice references, I think, inside the game. Like, Matt Pat makes an appearance, which I went, whoa, when I saw him. There's another YouTuber who apparently is a taxi driver. I don't know who he is, unfortunately, but who makes an appearance. There's, like, references here and there. Like, the Living Tombstone song plays over the credits, which I thought was pretty cool. There's a reference to, like, the dog. I can't remember his name, like, Scrappy, which is, like, a fan creation in there. There's a lot of things which, if you know Five Nights at Freddy's lore, you will point at it and be like, whoa, that's cool. And I will say, the costume and set design was fantastic. The animatronics looked really, like, quite good. Like, really, like, basically from the game. They're maybe a bit cleaner than the game. I'd like to see them a bit more scuffed up, but they looked really good. And the set actually looked pretty good as well. What can I say? I feel like the movie itself didn't quite activate the parts of what I think makes the horror element of Five Nights at Freddy's charming in the first place. And I don't really know what it's trying to go for. I mean, like, how would I change it? I would change it by basically making Mike just like a regular old guy. He doesn't need to have like some tragic lore behind it in the first place. I guess he does still need some sort of reason to be compelled to go there every night. Maybe he's found like undercovering some mystery, and he's, you know, maybe like the adventurous type or the silly type, or he's got some weird connections or some sort of cosmic thing, cosmic supernatural thing, which is pulling him there every single night. I don't know if Vanessa needs to be there. I feel like it should be Aliens-esque, you know, where it's just like him alone trying to survive against these things. And I cannot believe in the entire movie there's no game sequence where he's like flipping through the security cameras being like, wait, where did Bonnie go? Where did Chica go? And then like he looks out the door and he slams the door shut as like trying to bang and get in. I'm shocked. There's one moment where Foxy was at the end of a hallway. He was going to, you know, end someone's life, and they didn't do like the Foxy running animation down the hall, which is so iconic, I think, from the first game. I think everyone who played that first game, as soon as they saw Foxy sprinting down the hallway on the camera to them, absolutely lost and they perished while playing the game, just lost their souls, scared out of their wits. I'm shocked they didn't do that. They also didn't play the Toreador March, which is a very iconic thing for Freddy Fazbear himself. Basically, like, oh yeah, there's also like the element of power, being like, oh, the power is really unstable, but then it doesn't really go out all that often. It's never really used to create much tension. Because you can imagine it just like, I was like, near the end of the day, the power goes out and he's like, oh, the Toreador March start playing. And then like Mike's like, what on earth is going on? And he's basically now having to hide from Freddy in the office in the dark. But you can imagine exactly how that goes, right? Not just me. And I'm just like, it feels like there's so much lost opportunity there, while being able to be faithful to the game, while being able to maintain a horror element, while being able to maintain the sort of friendly, not friendly, the sort of franchise fandom appeal, which it's sort of known for. I'm not going to say it was like dreadful. I think if it's for you, you can still watch it fine. I don't think there's no redeeming qualities in the movie whatsoever, but I guess I'm just a bit disappointed, if anything. So, like, it ends up personally being for me like a 3 or 4 out of 10. I'd probably say 3 out of 10. I'm not like a huge fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, like not super into it franchise. I think if you're into it, you'll probably bump it up to like maybe like an 8 or something, because it's just like, it's really nice to see things you like, I suppose, on the big screen. Like, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it kind of loses itself in whatever it's trying to do, and it doesn't have a clear focus in mind. But I feel it's not unsalvageable, to be perfectly honest. I 100% bet you there's going to be more movies of this, presumably following each of the games. I just want to see more of a thriller and horror-esque element to it. No, it doesn't need to be gory, it doesn't need to be gruesome, because to be fair, Five Nights at Freddy's is not actually that gory a game. It's not like Saw. You don't really see much in the way of blood. Like, all the death screens are from first-person perspective, and it really is, it's just like the animatronic popping up on your screen going like, ah, or like your screen like flashes red. You don't see like dead bodies or anything like that. So I feel like you can still have that act of tension and a horror and that creeping element of fear without it being gory. I saw some people actually describing it as like it's an intro movie to horror movies. Like kids and teens can watch it as like an intro to a horror movie. And I think that would be true if they didn't have just like the dead bodies, I suppose. Like, it's a 15. Like, no, you can't really introduce a 13-year-old to or maybe 11-year-old to like a 15 movie. Like, they're not going to be allowed in. Like, at least in the UK, that's how it's rated. But, like, it was also, like, they didn't need to show necessarily the dead bodies in that sense. Like, they didn't need it to be so gory. But I don't know. I don't really know how ES... No, it's not ES... Whatever rating boards does the ratings for. But I can kind of see that. It just... I don't know. I guess I was excited to see how they would adapt it, because I think Five Nights at Freddy's has a very sort of unique feeling of horror and sensation in the game, and I wanted to see how they adapted it to the movie, but they didn't really go that direction, so it leaves me a little bit disappointed. But anyway, I don't know. You might watch it and you might love it, and that's totally fair. But the world doesn't march to the beat of one drum. It's a good thing we have all these different opinions so we can all, share them and see what we like, as long as, discussions, of course, remain civil. But it's a sort of thing where I'm like, yeah, it's not, like, unsalvageable or anything. To me personally, it just didn't quite hit exactly what I wanted. But on that note, I think I'm going to round this episode off here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, description, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time. Bye-bye for now.